viewers, welcome back to Rise and Shine Your Life here on Tobago Channel 5. This morning we're chatting with Mr. Martin George, attorney at law. Our topics this morning are on the election date called the 7th of September, as well as recently, in fact, the THA loses court battle, and some other hot topics in politics this morning. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning to you, and good morning to Tobago, and good morning to all your viewers all over the world.
Now, Mr. George, the last time you once said, but it was just about a week ago, a lot has happened within a week. Yes. A lot has happened in a week. We have the THA losing that court battle. We have the Prime Minister calling the election date, some say finally. And then a lot happening with regards an alleged Ganja find at the Prime Minister's Philippines residence some years ago. Where do we start off with you?
Well, the point is we could start with the last one first.
The alleged.
Yes.
Let's go with the alleged Ganja
which
find.
is the least significant of all the issues. The thing is, I have listened to all the players in this matter, and it appears to me, because I heard the former Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith, on the television this morning, and from what he said and gleaning from what he didn't say, it would seem to suggest that maybe, just maybe, there's the possibility that there might have been some find that occurred. However, as I said, we have to be practical and reasonable. If you have a massive residence where you have your head of government residing, you would have so many staff members in and out of the premises at all times. You would have security personnel, you'll have delivery personnel, you'll have service personnel. So therefore, if you find some 4 ounces of marijuana at some part in the residence, and from what I heard they said it might have been on a window ledge, who do you attach responsibility to? Clearly, you can't lay it anywhere near the feet of the Prime Minister to say that she's responsible unless you found it in some place or space that is only under her personal and private control at all times. And that has not been the situation as alleged from what I've seen in the media. So therefore, I think that it's a circumstance where maybe there was something, but of course, upon investigation, if the police are not able to attach any ownership to it, then you really can go no further, because you can't blame a homeowner in those circumstances. It's almost as if, say for instance, you are doing construction on your house and you have the contractor has workmen in and out of your premises, and then one day a police officer passes by and he checks the premises and finds a little 5 piece of marijuana on your premises. Are you, the homeowner, responsible for that? No, because the point is, from the contractor and his workmen who are in and out, it could be anybody who would have put that there. So therefore, you cannot be the one who is held responsible in such circumstances. So therefore, I would think that even if anything was found, and if those were the circumstances, then clearly the police would have made a call and decided, look, there's nothing to go any further with in the circumstances, and that's the end of the matter. Now, as regards the allegation of a cover-up, so if you have nobody to charge criminally, then there's no criminal cover-up. I think maybe what might have transpired, and of course I'm just trying to make sense of all the noise and chatter you're hearing from all sides, but the point is sometimes the truth lies halfway between what one side is saying and what the other side is saying. So therefore, when you analyze it that way, it may be that from a PR perspective, there was a decision that, look, we will say nothing publicly about this. Right? But it's not a criminal cover-up, because there was no criminal charge that you could really lay at anyone's feet. So therefore, it may have been a PR decision, a public relations decision that, look, you don't want the embarrassment of this, coming out in the public, so therefore nothing was said about it. And that may be the furthest that you could really, make any talk of cover-up. But then there's nothing criminal in that. So at the end of the day, it may be a question of, trying to make a mountain out of a molehill in these circumstances.
But Mr. George, can you blame this on any security breach, any at all?
Well, this is what I'm saying. It obviously would have been some kind of security breach, and therefore that's where the embarrassment factor would come in. But at the end of the day, this is not at the official residence. I would make a distinction had it occurred at La Fantasy in St. Anne's, which is the official residence of the Prime Minister. Then I would say in those circumstances, regardless of whether anyone is charged or not, then that's something that ought to be made public because you are talking about an official residence. This, however, is your private residence. So therefore, I would think that it really is the homeowner's discretion. They decide, look, I don't wish to make this public. You know, it's like, for instance, you have a home and there's a big empty lot of land, grassy land next to your home, and a firearm is found there, an illegal firearm is found there. And, you know, well, your house is the closest house, and people saying, well, boy, you know, you're the closest house. That doesn't put you in possession, ownership, or control of that. Yeah, but so therefore, you know, it just ends up being just speculation upon speculation. So it doesn't take us anywhere.
Mr. George, don't you think that the same seriousness in security that takes place at La Fantasy or at the official residence, once the Prime Minister chooses to live at their residence or another residence, that the same security or type of security should be transferred to the residence?
Well, of course.
On securing the Prime Minister and the residence? Of
course, but the point is you are dealing with just two different instances, in that in the first instance where you're talking about you residing at the official residence, you're not just guarding the Prime Minister, you're also guarding state property and the official residence. So in other words, if she is not the Prime Minister tomorrow, then whoever the Prime Minister comes in as, that's the same residence. So therefore you have a slightly different scenario there. Whereas if it's at her private home, you are guarding her, so therefore of course you need that level of security. But the residence itself is her private residence. So therefore in that circumstance, I would think that she would have some flexibility to say, well, look, how she wishes to manage that issue from a PR perspective. But I would make a distinction to say if it were at the official residence, then of course it's something that you ought to have disclosed to the public, but then still it doesn't take us any further as regard any criminal cover-up. That's my humble analysis.
Suppose it comes out that the fine was made at one of her bedroom windows, outside her bedroom window.
Even if it's outside your bedroom window, if you're talking outside, then of course, how do you control that in the sense that, okay, it could be any one of any workman or anything of the sort who could have put that there. You would have cleaners in and out of your bedroom, that kind of thing. So we have to be practical and realistic in such scenarios and not try to see demons or phantoms everywhere.
Okay. Right, let us talk about the central government, THA central government court case, Mr. George. The THA loses in court, and this was with regards to the issue of the Ministry of Tobago Development and incursions within the THA.
Not Ministry of Tobago Development.
This
had to do with a matter which was filed by the THA, and let's not lose sight of that perspective. This is a matter that the THA themselves took to court.
Right. With regard?
It stemmed from the Department of Agriculture, Marketing, Marine Affairs, and the Environment. I think that's it, right? They had applied to central government to access over $300 million from the Green Fund, right? So that's, you remember the Green Fund is a national fund that the government takes out from your taxes and stuff like that. So therefore, that fund is set up there for environmental projects. That division of Agriculture, Marketing, Marine Affairs, and the Environment, they applied to the Green Fund in Trinidad through the Minister of Marine, Water Resources, and the Environment. At the time, I think it was Mr. Ganja Singh. I think it still is, actually. Right? They applied for funding, around $300 million of funding from that Green Fund. What they said is that they laid out a plan showing that they wanted to do reforestation in Tobago. So for those purposes, they said, look, we wish to access monies from the Green Fund. Now, there were two issues that we saw from a legal perspective. Number one, can the THA as a body qualify as a proper applicant under the Green Fund?
Right.
Because when you look at it, the way it's worded, you get the impression that it really seeks to limit itself to community groups or organizations, you know, who have like a project and then they can make that application. Does the THA really fit into that category? That's one question, but that's the small issue. That's not the major issue. The major issue was that the ministry from central government told the division of the THA, hey, listen, this reforestation project that you want to embark upon is not consistent with our national reforestation policy. So in those circumstances, we do not approve your plan. So the issue then was whether the THA, which has responsibility for forestry in Tobago under the Tobago House of Assembly Act, and particularly under the 5th schedule, right? Because remember, you have 32 areas where the Tobago House of Assembly has exclusive control and jurisdiction, which would include forestry, agriculture, those things, right? You have forestry, agriculture, marketing, fisheries, marine resources, all those things they have control of under the 5th schedule. However, the question is, on matters of policy, can the Tobago House of Assembly make and implement policy in relation to these areas which is inconsistent with central government's policy? So in other words, while you have control, it is control within the framework of central government's policy. And that's what was the big eye-opener for the THA, because they were of the view that they had unfettered control over these areas under the 5th schedule. And I think most of us as Tobagonians may have been laboring under that misapprehension, because we all feel very passionate about the THA, and we feel very proud about the fact that, you know, we have the ability to manage our own affairs. However, you are ring-fenced by the power and authority and directives of the cabinet. And this comes from the Constitution. Section 75 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago puts the cabinet in charge of the government, in charge of Trinidad and Tobago. So you have a scenario where, regardless of what powers and authorities you may have in the THA, regardless of what powers and authorities have been devolved to you under that 1996 Act, you are still circumscribed by the four corners of cabinet directives and policy.
So what control does the THA have? And is this just this one? I mean, this is not just this. Is this just this one matter? This one scenario? Is it that? What control does the THA have?
Well, that's the question, and that's why it is so interesting, because it will relate to all the matters, all the areas under the 5th schedule where Tobago House of Assembly may have felt that, look, we are king of the rock, top dog.
Right.
But yes, you're top dog, but you are on a leash held by the cabinet. So you can go as far as that leash will allow you. So, you know, it's like, you know, you tie a dog and you put a stake in the ground. He can run all the way around, but only as far as that leash allows him to. And that's exactly the scenario. So in other words, you're in charge of that little area where you can run around, but no further, because you are still pegged to the overarching and overriding authority of cabinet.
We're talking about a change in constitution to amend this, and not a change in THA Act. This is more a constitution issue? Well,
I'll tell you, it will have to involve that. It will have to involve that, yes. Because, Eddie, you had a question, but let me just finish this point. When we analyze this matter, and I'll tell you, this is, I think, the most significant court matter for Tobago that has occurred since, I think, in the 80s, when there was a similar challenge, and I'll come to that in a bit. because we went through the records of Hansard. We went through the contributions of, he was then Minister Extraordinaire, Honorable A.N.R. Robinson at the time. We went through the contributions of Mr. Patrick Manning. We went through the contributions of Mr. Dr. Rowley. Right? We went through the contributions of Camille Robinson Regis, contributions of MP Roger Boynes at the time. Everybody who commented on the bill, Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, he was in the parliament at the time, his contributions. So in this court matter, we analyzed everything. So we got to the meat of the issue to understand the thinking of our legislators when they crafted this legislation. And in November 1996, in the contribution in Hansard, and it's there as a matter of public record for anyone to go and check, in the contribution of the Honorable Minister Extraordinaire, A.N.R. Robinson, he said that based on a point raised and argued by member Camille Robinson Regis, there is a concession that is going to be made to the authority of cabinet as contained in section 75(1) of the Constitution. He indicated it would have not been his first choice. However, he said he understands that based on that constitutional remit, cabinet has the ultimate control of Trinidad and Tobago. So therefore, in other words, what we thought we had all along is not really
the powers.
Yes, it's like what the president said. The powers that you think you have, you don't have. And the powers that you have, you don't really have them. It's really, that is exactly the situation that Tobago finds itself in. And that's why I say it's not something for us to be emotional about and to say, well, you know, you're getting upset and angry and frustrated and, you know, you're complaining about people being unfair, this, that, the other. No, the point is, it's necessary for us to do this type of forensic legal analysis to get to the root of the problem. Because you see, what has happened, our politicians, for whatever reason, they've been, you know, riding the emotional wave, you know, going about Tobago, you know, beating their chest, saying, well, yes, you know, we are in control and we want more power. Hello, you don't even know what you have. And what you thought you had is not even as much as it is. So therefore, let's be